The room was filled with power, wealth, and quiet competition. Every person there knew the rules, only the richest win. And then he walked in. A single dad in simple clothes, holding his child's hand, stepping into a world that clearly wasn't built for him. The whispers started instantly. Some smiled. Others laughed. "He's in the wrong place," someone said. But he didn't leave. He didn't argue. He simply sat down and waited. And when the bidding started, no one expected what would happen next. Because the moment he raised his hand, everything changed. Stay till the end, because the reason behind his final bid will leave everyone in that room speechless. The auction hall was a place where wealth spoke without words. Polished floors reflected the shine of luxury cars displayed under perfect lighting, each one representing not just engineering, but status. People gathered there weren't just buyers. They were competitors, each one carrying confidence built on resources, influence, and power. Conversations were controlled, gestures calculated, and every movement carried intention. This was not a place for uncertainty. This was a place for those who already knew they could win. And then there was Arif. A man who didn't fit into that world, not by appearance, not by status, not by expectation. He walked in quietly, holding the hand of his young daughter, who looked around with wide eyes, taking in everything with a mix of wonder and curiosity. To her, it was fascinating. To others, it was confusing. The contrast was immediate. Simple clothes in a room filled with tailored suits. A calm presence in a space driven by competition. People noticed him, not with interest, but with judgment. "Is this open to the public now?" someone whispered. "Maybe he's lost," another replied, barely hiding a smile. Arif heard it. He understood it. But he didn't respond. Because he hadn't come there to prove anything. He had come for something specific. Something important. Something no one else in that room could see. His daughter looked up at him. "Are we really buying a car here?" she asked softly. He smiled, not with certainty, but with reassurance. "We'll see," he said. The auction began, and the energy shifted instantly. Bids were placed quickly, numbers rising with confidence and ease. Each car carried its own story, its own value, its own audience. And each time, the same pattern repeated: competition, escalation, victory. Arif watched quietly, observing not just the process, but the people. The way they reacted, the way they calculated, the way they assumed control. To them, this was normal. To him, it was something else entirely. Then came the car. It wasn't just another vehicle, it carried history, significance, and something deeper that wasn't immediately visible. The room responded differently. More attention. More interest. More competition. The starting bid was already beyond what most people could imagine. Hands went up quickly, voices steady, numbers climbing without hesitation. Arif remained still. Not because he couldn't act, but because he was waiting. The whispers started again. "He won't even try," someone said. "He doesn't belong here." But they didn't know what he knew. They didn't see what he saw. And when the moment came, he raised his hand. The room paused. Not because the bid was unexpected in value, but because of who made it. Arif's hand was steady, his expression calm, his presence unchanged. For a brief second, people thought it might be a mistake. A misunderstanding. Something that would be corrected quickly. But it wasn't. The auctioneer acknowledged the bid, and the process continued. The competition intensified, but now, the focus had shifted. It wasn't just about the car anymore, it was about him. The men who didn't belong, now standing in the same space as those who had already claimed it as their own. Bids continued to rise, pushing the limits of what most considered reasonable. But Arif didn't react to the pressure. He didn't rush, didn't hesitate. He simply responded when it mattered. Each time, his bid was precise. Controlled. Intentional. The whispers turned into silence. Because what started as amusement had become something else entirely. Uncertainty. Doubt. Curiosity. And then, it happened. The final bid. Higher than anyone expected. Higher than anyone was willing to match. The room held its breath as the auctioneer confirmed it. Once. Twice. And then, sold. The sound echoed through the hall, marking the end of something no one had anticipated. Arif had won. Not just the car, but the moment. The same people who had dismissed him now stood still, their assumptions undone by something they couldn't ignore. The auctioneer approached, professionalism masking the surprise that lingered beneath. "Congratulations," he said. "Will you be completing the payment now?" It was the question everyone was waiting for. Because in their minds, this was where reality would return. Where the story would correct itself. Arif nodded calmly. But instead of reaching for something obvious, something expected, he did something else. He stepped forward, placing a simple folder on the table. Inside were documents. Not flashy. Not dramatic. But undeniable. The room watched as the verification began. And slowly, the truth unfolded. Arif wasn't just a participant. He wasn't just someone who had stepped into their world. He had always been part of a different one. A world built not on display, but on decisions. Years ago, he had worked behind the scenes, solving problems others couldn't, building systems others relied on, creating value that wasn't visible, but essential. The car he had just purchased wasn't chosen for its price. It was chosen for its story. Because it had once belonged to someone who had given him an opportunity when he had nothing. Someone who had believed in him before success found him. And now, he was returning that moment, not by words, but by action. His daughter looked at him, her eyes filled with something deeper than excitement. "Is this why we came?" she asked. Arif nodded. "Some things are worth more than money," he said. The room didn't respond immediately. Because what they had witnessed wasn't just a transaction. It was a reminder. That value isn't always visible. That success doesn't always announce itself. And that the people we underestimate often carry the stories we don't understand. As Arif walked out, nothing about him had changed on the surface. He was still the same man who walked in, quiet, composed, present. But everything around him had shifted. Because sometimes, the loudest statement isn't made with words. It's made with actions that speak for themselves.